Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Finally, I'm going to finish this door up today. I'm going to start with my 8-inch DA, 8-inch mud buster, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to float this over it. I'm not going to put any pressure on anything. And I'm going to peel it down till I've got a uniform finish. There's no ridges, there's no little dimples in the Bondo. And I don't want to go to the point where I'm starting to see paint underneath it. So I just want to get it nice and flat. And I'm going to keep it off this edge here. I don't want to come out here onto the paint, put sand scratches into here. So I'm going to keep it back about 2 inches. And then this, I'll feather out with the DA. I do this before I block it. So that way I'm not starting with the block and trying to cut all these ridges down and marks from the applicator. I just want to get it nice and flat. And I'm just using 80 grit on here. Like I said, that's the coarsest I'll use, and that's plenty. It'll cut down pretty quick. Stick around till the end of this video. What I'm going to do, I've got a mill gauge here, a paint mill gauge, and we're going to see how much filler is on here. Most of it's going to be pretty thin. The mill gauge will probably work. The only thing that's going to be a little bit heavier is right in here in this low spot, as you remember. So let's get started on this. Now I'll take my DA with some 80, and I'm going to get a little closer to this paint line here. I'm going to take some 120 on the DA and get this all feathered out. I do this before I block on it. Okay, now we're ready to block. I'm going to use 80 grit on here, and I've got a longer block, but I very seldom use it. With the crowns and the curves to these panels, the little shorter one works a little bit better, I think. Because remember, this still has a little bit of a crown to the back. You don't want something that's too long that you're just, it seems like it focuses everything on a high spot on a crown. This just a little bit lighter to work, and you can kind of float it over and make it curve a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. 80 grit here. And if it shows up, there's a couple places you can just start seeing shadows of the paint underneath. Here's one. It probably doesn't show up, but Once I seen that, I stop. I don't want to go any farther. And there's no dimples or anything. There's no low spots. So we should be real good. And I want to keep the block the same thing. I don't want to cut into this paint and scratch it up. I finished this with 120 on a DA. So I want to make sure that I don't go past that paint. Once we get an 80, then I'll switch to 120. You can start to see through the Bondo here, the paint, you got shadows. So everything's looking real good. I don't see anything that's too high. I don't see anything that's way too low. So we're still gonna probably take most of this off down here. It's gonna disappear slowly, but it's gonna come out nice. And if you remember, the reason I'm out this far, right, there's that eyebrow, you can just faintly see it, and it had still a little bit of a low spot right behind it. So that's why I taper it out far enough. I don't want to stop short and then end up with a line that you can see once it's painted right in there. So go a little bit extra and you can always just work it back in. Okay, I'm going to switch to 120. Maybe. As you can see, everything is cutting down nice and flat. You can just barely see a little shadow from that base coat of Bondo that I put in there to begin with. And there's nothing that's coming up like it's a big high spot where it needed to be worked on a little bit more before Bondo. Everything is nice and flat. The Bondo is just slowly disappearing. It just feathers out, just leaves little shadows in here. So everything is coming out real nice. Okay, then I'm going to take my finish sander with some 220, go all the way around the edges, and then float it over to Bondo real light, and I think we'll be done. Okay, it's ready for prime. Now I've got this mill gauge, it's Blue Point, and it's got a magnet in here. Let me stick it over here where you can maybe see it, hear it. And what it does, the magnet sticks to the metal and you pull it up slowly, and it's got a scale in there, and it'll tell you mils and where it, you can kind of see it. We're looking at about 7 mils with the factory finish. So let's put it down here on our filler and see where we're at. Okay, you read that scale, it's upside down on the video, but when you're standing over it, you can look underneath it. There's 10 mils, there's 8 mils, it releases right about between 6 mils. Say we're gonna call it about 6 mils. Let's start back here. $14, $12, $10 mils. There's our eyebrow. It just barely broke through the metal. $12 mils here. Let's go a deeper spot. And here it doesn't hold on. It'll just, you can hear it. The magnet still goes through the Bondo. What about here on the edge? This was the deepest part right here. It doesn't grab. It does kind of on the edge, but right in here. And I knew that's how it would be, but that's a very small spot, and you could see when I had the straight edge on there, it was basically maybe 30 thousandths, 35 thousandths. Here we're at 12 mils, same thing, a little bit deeper right there. There's about 13. So basically, the paint is around, the E-coat and the factory paint is around 7 mils, and we're at roughly right around 12 mils. The only deeper spots are right in here, right in here. All right, now if you remember, this door was in the scrap pile. It was caved in pretty good, and about anything is repairable, but it depends if it makes economic sense, and this one didn't. There's a lot of damage to the shell. It'd be tough to straighten it, and I'd imagine on this vehicle the B-pillar was in, so you're better off with a factory door so you can make sure your B-pillar, everything fits right. But this door was very repairable, and I think right now I've got 7 to 7.5 hours in it total from start to this point, and it's ready for the paint shop now. So that's not a whole lot of time. It's not a lot of filler. Everything come out nice, and I know you can't feel it on the video, but you can usually tell by looking at somebody's body work how it is. There's no sharp line where the Bondo stops, so everything is floated out real nice. It takes minimal primer to go over this, block it one more time, but it come out real good. And I hope I explained everything in this series, and that was my intention. Every step of the way, from the analysis on the door, how you're going to start with it, where you're going to repair, the hammers and dollies and picks, how they're used, to what extent you can use them, and also where you need to stop before you cause more damage. And I even tried to explain as best I could how to put the Bondo on here. And you know, I put that base coat in, and I can see most of it here, so it might not have even been necessary, but I didn't want to have to come over this and put another coat on top, and I explained all that. So hopefully I broke everything down, made it fairly easy to understand. There was, like I said, there was no magic here involved when it was off camera. The only thing I did was edit for time. So I'm happy with the way it come out. Actually, I kind of surprised myself. This door was pretty bad shape, and I thought it might be a little too rough to do a video, but I'm happy with it. The time was right in there, and I was guessing somewhere around 8 hours, and I think I'm in about 7.5. So that's real good. But anyway, I hope you like this video and the series. And if you liked it, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, and remember, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.